February 14th, 2022. Can we have the roll?
Greg Strike.
Present. Here.
Andre Spinelli.
Here.
Jared Gardner.
Here.
Radhika Krishna.
Here.
Jim Winchester.
Here.
Scott Pullis.
Here.
Jeff Ron.
Here.
Aaron O'Quinn is excused. You have a quorum. Thank you.
Okay, we've got no minutes we need to go through, so we'll just move on to disclosures. Commissioner Pullis.
No disclosures.
Commissioner Winchester.
No disclosures.
Commissioner Spinelli.
No disclosure.
Commissioner Ron.
No disclosures.
Commissioner Strike.
No disclosures.
Commissioner Krishna.
No disclosures.
And no disclosures for myself. Nothing on the consent agenda, so we will just be moving straight toward the items on set for public hearing. Before we get to those, I'll read the procedure by which the public may speak at the commission at its meetings. After the staff presentation is completed on public hearing items, the chair will ask for public testimony on the issue. Persons who wish to testify will follow the time limits established in the commission rules of procedure. Petitioners, including all of his or her representatives, will receive 10 minutes. Part of this time may be reserved for rebuttal. Representatives of groups, community councils, PTAs, etc. will receive 5 minutes. Individuals will receive 3 minutes. When your testimony is complete, you may be asked questions by the commission. You may only testify once on any issue unless questioned by the commission. An individual may have appeal rights relating to any action the Planning and Zoning Commission takes, except commission recommendations to the Assembly which are not appealable. Appeals must be filed with the clerk's office within 20 days after approval by the Planning and Zoning Commission of the resolution, which is the commission's final decision. A fee for the appeal is required at the time of filing. With that, the first item on the agenda is case 2022-0013. Can we have a report from the staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a request to rezone from CEB3 SL, Chugach Eagle River General Business with Special Limitations District, to a CEB3, Chugach Eagle River General Business District. This is tracks A, B, and C of the P&M subdivision, which is also the P&M greenhouses on Eagle River Road. In 1984, this parcel was rezoned with a majority of the Eagle River Valley due to a population growth between 1980 and 1983 in the Eagle River area. Most of the Eagle River Valley at this time was classified as unrestricted, which is basically no zoning. And so the municipality took it upon itself to rezone all the Eagle River Valley into its own zoning. If you look at your packet on page 63 at the back, the Assembly Memorandum has the majority of the information on this action. It is recommended that the North Eagle River Valley be rezoned to zoning use districts that generally correspond to existing land use patterns, reflect topographic and other environmental constraints, and reflect the attitude of the people of this area towards development. The Assembly Memorandum also basically dictates residential zoning. There was, as they pointed out in the memorandum, commercial and industrial was 1% or negligible in the zoning. So P&M Gardens subdivision was rezoned to what it was, which was a greenhouse, which was B3. The CE was added in new Title 21 for designation in the Chugach Eagle River area. The special limitation that they're wishing to remove is the ancillary uses. Right now it says, if you look at staff packet, page number 2, about halfway down, excerpt from AO 84-101 amended. The B3 SL2 district is subject to the following special limitation regarding uses of the property. Use of the property is limited to a commercial greenhouse and ancillary use. The petitioner held their community meeting with the Eagle River Valley Community Council on November 10th, 2021 in accordance with 2103020C. A summary of that meeting is also included in the packet. The approval criteria. Number 1, the rezoning shall be in best interest of the citizens of Anchorage and shall promote the public health, safety, and general welfare. This standard is met. The existing zoning is CEB3 and is staying CEB3. just an elimination of the SL part of it. Number 2, the rezoning complies with and conforms to the comprehensive plan, including the comprehensive plan maps. This standard is also met. The current Chugach Eagle River Comprehensive Plan Update 2006 shows this as commercial property, and this is also staying commercial property, general business. Number 3, the rezoning is generally consistent with the zoning district purpose in the requested zone and the purpose of this title. This standard is also met. Again, the rezoning is consistent with the purpose of the CEB3 zoning district, just eliminating the special limitation. Number 4, the rezoning is compatible with surrounding zoning and development and protects area designated for specific uses on the zoning map from incompatible land uses or development intensities. This standard is also met. It's surrounded currently by CER7 and CER6, which is large lot homes, large lot land, and also CER3 with special limitations to the south. As a side note, the P&M Gardens were constructed in 1976 prior to the zoning, and when they constructed, there was actually only one residential structure to the east of them, nothing to the north, nothing to the west at the time when they originally constructed. Number 5, facilities and services including road and transportation, water, gas, electricity, police, fire protection, sewage, and waste disposal as applicable are capable of supporting the uses allowed by the zone or will be capable by the time development is complete while maintaining adequate levels of service to existing development. This property borders an arterial, Eagle River Road. Natural gas and electricity are available to the property. This parcel is not connected to water or sewer. It is within the police service area, the Anchorage Fire Service area, the Chugach Birchwood Eagle River Rural Road Service area, and the Eagle River Chugach Park and Recreation Service area. The petition site is located outside of the Building Safety Service area. The rezoning is not likely to result in significant adverse impacts upon the natural environment, including air, water, noise, stormwater management, wildlife, and vegetation, or such impacts shall be substantially mitigated. This standard is also met, given that the greenhouses existed since 1976 in this location. The proposed rezoning is not likely to result in significant adverse impacts upon adjacent land uses, or such impacts shall be mitigated through stipulations. This standard is also met. The proposed rezoning will not result in significant impacts on adjacent land uses. The current use as a commercial property will remain as it has been for the last 46 years at this location. Standard 8. The rezone does not extend or exacerbate a land use pattern that is inconsistent with the comprehensive plan. Again, this area in the 2006 Chugach Eagle River update is considered commercial and is still remaining as a commercial property. The rezoning shall not result in a split zoned lot. The standard is met. The rezoning will not create a split zone lot. The department finds that all 9 approval criteria for rezone are met. The department recommends approval of the removal of special limitation. Use of the property is limited to a commercial greenhouse and ancillary uses. Thank you.
Commissioner Ron?
Thank you through the chair. Staff, thank you for the thorough review of the staff packet. Could you help the commission understand what elements of the special limitation are in conflict with the existing use?
So the ancillary use criteria eliminates any further development or uses of the property other than for greenhouses. There's an existing cell tower location on this site that would be considered not something ancillary use. Currently, I don't believe the greenhouses are doing any other commercial activities like Bell's does with a cafe or anything like that, but that would also limit them from future use of the property in that manner.
So if I understand your response, it's the use itself in terms of how it does or doesn't fit in the definition of ancillary as opposed to a physical development on the site. So it's not a height issue, it's not a, it's use.
Through the chair, that's correct. Commissioner Vaughn.
And I'll just ask briefly, the proposed tower, is it clear, and maybe the petitioner could speak to this, but what type it would be in terms of what for the proceedings would be required, and whether there would be a conditional use application or something else that we'll expect to see in the future?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. So the reason this is being brought across is because the petitioner originally put in two different cases, one an administrative review for this site, and then there's also another case that is a public hearing for the monopole. It'll be a monopole construction. Currently, it's a 70-foot wood pole with one carrier on it. That's vertical bridge, which is GCI's basically arm or component of telecommunications. And according to code, if you replace, drop or swap, so they call swap and drop towers, you're supposed to design and build a tower to mitigate how many carriers can go in a certain area or to increase co-location at one site. And so that is the direction that Vertical Bridge is going at this time, is to put in a larger tower that can be co-located with other carriers, minimizing other towers in the area.
Okay, and sorry, just to make sure I understand, with respect to other cases, would that additional tower require, I guess, will we expect to see another case for details on that tower, or is that managed separately?
There is another case. I don't believe this board or commission is the one that reviews it, but there is one of the other boards or commissions does. I believe it's ZEBA for a dimensional variance.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no questions pending, is there someone from the petitioner? Sorry, can you turn on your mic and maybe lift it up? There's a button with like a little mouth. There you go.
There, is that it? Okay, I'm Gary Brecky, representing Vertical Bridge S3 assets on this resolution.
Okay, and you've got 10 minutes, but you're welcome to reserve any for rebuttal if you'd like.
I think Mr. Hatcher summed it up pretty well. If you have specific questions about it, I'd be happy to answer any of those.
Commissioner Ron?
Thank you, Mr. Berkey. Would you mind speaking briefly to the community outreach and response that may have been received regarding the case?
As far as attending the community council meeting, it was a virtual meeting, and I presented the project in its entirety and what it's going to entail as far as replacing the wooden pole with a steel monopole, and the time frame and equipment necessary, and the community council was actually very positive about it. There was not one negative comment, and I think they wrote a positive recommendation for the project as well. So
Okay, and just for the benefit of the commissioners here, we're having some technical difficulties, so if you're trying to put in, I may not see you, so give me a signal if you're looking to speak. Okay, not seeing any, you can reserve the rest of your time for rebuttal if you'd like.
yeah, no, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, and if there's anyone present who's wishing to speak to this case, feel free to come forward. Yeah, it's the little mouth symbol towards the right.
I'm pressing there.
There you go. Yeah, it's on. And if you
Hi,
could state
I'm
your
Brenda Schmidt, and I'm a homeowner in the area. I'm just wondering, I heard something about a new cell tower. Is that going to be taller than the one they're replacing? I guess I'm not understanding.
So my understanding is that it will be, but I'll let the petitioner give specific details about what that will look like
Okay.
on rebuttal.
Okay. I'm just wondering if we live on Loon Circle, and we have a wonderful, beautiful view, and I'm wondering if the cell tower is going to destroy our view, which would decrease our property value. Quite concerned about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else looking to testify on this matter? Okay, I don't see anyone else, so you're welcome to speak to rebuttal if you would like.
Gary Brecky. I don't know if it's a rebuttal so much, but yes, the new proposed tower is going to be taller to accommodate at least 2 other carriers besides the existing one. So there will be some visual impact, but I'm not sure exactly what it would be for you. So.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think we've got a question here from Commissioner Pullis.
I just wanted to confirm that, currently the plan is basically to replace the existing cell tower, but nothing else. I heard something about an administrative site plan review. I think that has to do with the cell tower. But kind of one of my only concerns, I'm all about replacing the cell tower, I get that, is that getting rid of the special limitations on a B3 lot in an area surrounded by nothing but low-density housing seems like, something could get put there that maybe all those people wouldn't want. I get the greenhouse has been there forever and no problems with that, but I just have a debate in my head about no special limitations at this site, given that the surrounding densities is just low-density housing. So if you could speak to that just a little bit.
Sure. Well, the existing cell site has been there since about 2001, and I'm not sure why the SL designation wasn't addressed when it was permitted. So, and what we were trying to do is just replace the tower. That's the most visible thing, because the way the cell site sits right now, it's behind a couple of greenhouses and a large warehouse. So it's the cell site itself, the ground equipment isn't visible at all to the public. The tower is, if you know where to look, the wooden pole. The new tower will be more visible than that wooden pole is now. And the compound where the existing cellular ground equipment is will expand slightly to accommodate additional carriers' ground equipment. So the changes that on the ground won't be visible to the general public from the road at all, but the tower will be visible.
Okay, I don't see any further questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
With that, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And what's the will of the body? Motion from Commissioner Ron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In case 2022-0013, I move that the Commission grant a request to rezone from CEB 3SL, Chugiak Eagle River Business with Special Limitations District, to CEB 3, Chugiak Eagle River General Business District. And I don't believe we have any department recommendations.
Okay, that motion is seconded by Commissioner Spinelli. Commissioner Ron, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I do concur with staff in their conclusion regarding the 9 elements for evaluation, and that this standard is met. I appreciate the information provided about the conflict between the special limitation and ancillary use, noting that, as we heard, a tower has been in place for quite some time, and this action allows that use to continue in a way that's conducive to the environment that we now live and work in and rely upon regarding cell service and access. Appreciate the petitioner's reflection of engagement with the Community Council, and we do have a letter in the staff packet from that Community Council showing support for the motion. That said, I appreciated Commissioner Pullis's prior comments around potential change in use. I believe I heard staff say that nothing has been proposed regarding the change in use of the site as a greenhouse at this point in time. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further comments, we'll go, oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Spinelli, I see you here now.
I also intend to support the motion, and I guess I just wanted to let the public that testified know that there will be another case where the specifics of the poll are heard, so you might want to pay attention and tune into that. So, other than that, I do intend to support the motion.
Okay, now I think I don't see anyone further, so we'll go ahead and call the vote.
Mr. Strike?
Yes.
Ms. Krishna?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that motion passes. Next item on the agenda is case 2022-0017. Can we hear a report from staff, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair Gardner. The property owners and their representative have submitted a development master plan for review and approval for Glacier City Center in Girdwood. This will be a horizontal mixed-use development. The development master plan proposes a commercial building with a craft micro distillery, sandwich shop, and coffee shop, as well as 10 townhouse-style multifamily dwelling units, each constructed among 2 buildings with 5 units each. The development is within the GC8 zoning district, which is in the new Townsite North Commercial District in Girdwood. The condominiums would be towards the western side of the tract, towards California Creek, and the commercial building would be at the southeast corner of the tract to face Hightower Road and the post office. Construction would be done in 2 phases, with the residential condominiums built before the commercial building. Since the development master plan has higher standards than a site plan review, the development master plan review will serve as the approval for the proposed uses in the commercial building. The applicant would still need to obtain a building permit. A recommended condition of approval is for a separate plating action to remove or relocate the building setback, telecommunications, and electrical easements shown on the plat in the location of the proposed buildings. Again, this plating action is separate from the development master plan review and will be decided upon separately by the plating officer. The planning department sent notice of the development master plan review in accordance with Title 21. The applicant also held their community meeting as required by Title 21. The Girdwood Board of Supervisors was supportive of the Glacier City Center Development Master Plan, inclusive of the proposed design alternatives. One neighbor submitted written comment with concerns for noise from the commercial deck. That resulted in a design change to address this comment. Departments had several comments which have been incorporated into conditions of approval and advisory comments in the staff report. The property owners and their representative have met with departments to obtain concurrence with the conditions of approval among all parties. There are 7 review criteria in Title 21 for development master plans. They are lettered A through G. I'll briefly go through each criterion that was evaluated in the staff report by the planning department. Criterion A is met with conditions of approval. The development master plan substantially conforms to the principles and objectives. Sorry, I think I'm getting an echo here. That's why. Okay, let's try that. That's much better. Thank you. Okay. Criterion A is met with conditions of approval. The development master plan substantially conforms to the principles and objectives of the Girdwood Area Plan, including those for expanding the town core as a commercial and community center, reducing vehicular congestion, and the placement of buildings outside of natural hazard areas. The conditions of approval will make sure a public sidewalk is within the right-of-way and there is barrier curb and gutter continued in the new town site area of Girdwood. The parcel is classified as commercial in the Girdwood Area Plan Land Use Map. Commercial areas still allow residential units as a secondary use. The proposed mixed-use development aligns with the commercial land use classification. Criterion B is met with conditions of approval. The conditions will limit driveway connections to 1 to Hightower Road and also provide pedestrian amenities. This aligns with Hightower Road's classification as a collector street in the official Streets and Highways Plan. The right-of-way for California Creek is not recommended to be developed at this time, and there are no anticipated conflicts with trails. Criterion C is met with conditions of approval. The project is funded by private developers, and the conditions of approval will ensure required public improvements are in place for the development. Criterion D is met with conditions of approval. The project will bring housing, new commercial businesses, and event space to the Girdwood community. The conditions of approval for barrier curb, gutter, and sidewalk within the Hightower Road right-of-way will provide safe public sidewalk facilities in the new Girdwood town site. Criterion E is met with conditions of approval. This parcel is in a commercial zoning district. Adjacent parcels are also in commercial districts. However, there are residential condominiums across Hightower Road that are within a commercial district. The petitioners have agreed to reduce the deck depth on the second floor of the commercial building and to limit its use between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. in response to neighbor concerns about noise. The developer is also keeping the condominium neighbors in mind with their final designs for construction phases, landscaping, and lighting. The conditions of approval note that right-of-way landscaping is the purview of the municipality. Criterion F is met with conditions of approval. There are sufficient public safety, transportation, utility facilities, and services available to serve the subject property at the proposed level of development. The Glacier Valley Transit Route goes past this parcel. There is sanitary sewer serves the site, and there is a water main beneath Hightower Road. The separate plating action will resolve the utility easements. Criterion G is met with conditions of approval. A development master plan may be submitted for any multi-building development in Girdwood. A development master plan may also propose different development and design standards than those required in Title 21. There are 6 design alternatives proposed in this development master plan. There's 3 for zoning district requirements. So residential uses would be on upper and lower stories. There would not be an arcade for the condominiums, and a roof overhang would extend into the side setback for the commercial building. There's 1 design alternative for dimensional standards. The condominiums would exceed the maximum front setback. And then there's 2 design alternatives for building design standards. Those are the commercial building roof pitch and the commercial building eastern wall scale and size would deviate from Title 21 requirements. The department finds these 6 design alternatives are equivalent to or exceed standards in Title 21. The conditions of approval for Glacier City Center ensure that design standards in Title 21 are met where alternatives have not been proposed. They include requirements for town site commercial area streets, curb, gutter, and sidewalk for Hightower Road, driveway connections to Hightower Road, information on landscaping, site lighting, street lighting, drainage, some dimensions for parking lot and bicycle parking evaluations, utility easements, fire safety, and environmental conditions. In summary, criteria A through G were found to be met with the approval conditions, and the department recommends approval of the Glacier City Center Development Master Plan, subject to the conditions of approval listed on page 10 and 11. I do have them listed. I won't ramble on too much longer, but the conditions of approval are 9 of them. 1, the development master plan matches the plans on file, except as modified by these conditions of approval. 2, a notice of zoning action is filed with the state. 3, barrier, curb, gutter, and sidewalk are within the right-of-way for Hightower Road. 4, landscaping shown within the right-of-way is removed. 5, the driveway connections to Hightower Road are reduced from 2 to 1. 6, that building setback and utility easements are vacated or realigned through a separate plating action. 7, some things are resolved with traffic engineering, many of them just requiring additional information for evaluation. 8, resolved with private development, some items, again, providing additional information, and also that the petitioners enter into an improvement to public place agreement for Hightower Road. 9, obtain review by the Alaska Fire Marshal. I've also included some advisory comments as a reminder for health permitting and noise regulations and notes on requirements for address posting of the condominiums. The petitioner and their representatives have worked with the municipality on these conditions and are agreeable to them. This concludes my staff report. Please note that the petitioner is in attendance tonight.
Thank you for the presentation. I'll look for questions from the commission before we hear from the petitioner because I'm not sure if I'll see your names on my screen here. So, is that a question? It's there. I just wasn't looking in the right spot. No. Commissioner Pullis.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a pretty good project, personally. I think the mixed-use stuff is what we've been trying to do. I have one question about the parking agreement. From what I understand in the packet, basically the post office has a public use parking with about 70 spaces, and it seems like the parking agreement would require to use half of their parking spaces. There's also a note in a community council member somewhere, or community council meeting, that that parking lot is pretty full due to construction of a clinic. So out of all these things I've looked at through this packet and understand pretty well, that's the one piece that's kind of hanging out there for me, is a parking agreement with a public parking space, and using quite a bit of it does not exist yet, correct?
Commissioner Pullis, that is correct. The parking agreement, it's often a condition of approval for projects like this. It's not usually finalized until I'd say more towards the building permit phase. So that's a pretty standard conditions out of the one given here. Title 21 does allow developments within the GC8 zoning district to count spaces from parking lots, public parking lots that are within 600 feet of the development. So what's proposed meets Title 21 requirements. I do hear you on the comment from community, but as far as Title 21 requirements, their proposed design does meet code.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ron.
Thank you, through the chair. 2 questions. The first is about stream setback. Page 2 of the staff packet makes mention that the applicant narrative also mentions the stream protection easement to be vacated. My apologies, I wasn't able to chase that down for further reference, but it goes on to state that the petitioner confirmed this will not be necessary after additional verification. Is that, to staff's sense, adequately captured, or could it be more firmly placed as a department recommendation such that California stream setback shall not be vacated? I'm just concerned about that point and making sure that it's captured.
Commissioner Ron, when the applicant first submitted this application, they were planning to vacate that stream easement, but then still follow requirements in code for development to be a certain distance from California Creek. So they're still following what Title 21 requires for development setback from California Creek. Since they looked further as to what is required on the plat, they've realized they no longer need to vacate that because they're also out of there. So I feel it's actually the existing requirement in Title 21 to be a certain distance back from California Creek. I apologize, I don't remember the exact distance. I'd have to look it up, but I think the Title 21 existing requirement covers them, and then since they're not in the plat setback, then they should be good.
Okay, thank you. Second question is around potential building B. I see it on sheet AO and in a few other locations. It's a bit of a mystery to me. Can you tell me how staff is considering that within the context of review of this development plan?
Yes, Commissioner Ron, the planning department and staff did not consider building B in the evaluation of this project. So there's the commercial building, that's building A, and then there's the 2 buildings for the condominiums. That other building is proposed future development. We did advise the applicant and the representative to remove that building on the application just for clarity, because that future building was not taken into account because we don't know anything about the use or the size or anything about it.
Thank you for that. And again, my concern would be, as Department Recommendation 1 talks about substantive compliance with the application, does that then open the door to potential building B moving forward, if that's not the intent?
Commissioner Ron, it would not. There's a requirement in code for if there's if there's a substantial change from what's approved for this development master plan. So I'd say if there is a future building B, they might have to come back and revisit this development master plan. They would still need to go through a building permit process and make sure they have enough parking for the uses on building B. So with the approval of this development master plan, it would just be for the building A and condominiums, and it would not mean that future building B is approved with this process.
Okay, if there's a representative from the petitioner.
Hello, my name is Nathan Ellis. I'm here with my wife Elizabeth and Marco Zaccaro with Z Architects. Myself and my wife, we own Glacier City Center, and we live in Girdwood. Our family's in Girdwood, and so we live there full time. I just wanted to show you the tremendous support that we've gotten from our community, both about the need for housing and also the need for a commercial space in our downtown district. I know we have limited time. Marco here is going to have a good detailed account. We also have our civil engineer on hand here for any questions that you might have. Marco.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Marco Zaccaro. I'm with the Architects. I'm going to take my mask off so you can hear me. We are representing Liz and Nathan Ellis.
I'm sorry, if you could maybe just turn the microphone a little close. There you go.
There
yeah.
you go.
Thank you.
Thanks. Longtime Girdwood residents who are planning to build a mixed-use development on their acre-and-a-half property in the new Girdwood town site. As noted by staff, we are applying for a development master plan for the project. The site is located, this is the Girdwood Town Square. This project is located just north of the Girdwood Town Square on Hightower Road in the new Girdwood town site area. Liz, if you would flip the next sheet over. As noted by staff, GC8 is located in the, Glacier City Center is located in the GC8 zoning district, and the intent of this district as described in the Girdwood land use regulations is for the northward commercial and residential expansion of the new town site core. Properties along Hightower Road shall express a visible transition from the built-up environment around town square to a more forested landscape. The proposal is for 10 townhouses and a commercial building. The townhouses are arranged along the west side of the lot abutting California Creek, and the commercial building is in the southeast corner, close to on Hightower Road, as close to the Girdwood town core as we can place it. The advantages of this, so what we are proposing is a horizontal mixed-use development rather than a vertically stacked mixed-use development, as is required in the underlying zoning regulations for this district. The advantages of this arrangement are as follows. The residential units are in the quieter parts of the site, with California Creek as a backyard. California Creek runs right along here. To enhance the commercial building enhances pedestrian connections to the town site core and is as close to existing downtown Girdwood commercial areas as possible. The commercial building is arranged along the south edge of the property, opening to the south, which enhances south light into the main spaces and outdoor patios, while also screening the neighbors across High Tower Road from potential noise. So this is the commercial building here. It's stretched out along the south property line, south in this direction. We left the part of the property across the street from the existing multifamily open so that they're not looking straight across the street at commercial buildings. The underlying zoning suggests that the commercial be built at the minimum and maximum front yard setback along High Tower Road, which would substantially impact the neighbors across the street. If you would flip to the next one. This is our enlarged site plan. Again, here's the commercial building, the 10 townhouses. We easily meet all the required minimum requirements for our native vegetation retention, landscaping, snow storage requirement, parking. To touch on the parking, we are allowed to use any public parking within 600 feet of the site, walking feet, and there are 70 public parking spaces within that distance. And so we will be using 32 of those. If I have my numbers, remember my numbers correctly. The commercial building, which is in the southeast corner again, this is the south face. It has all the south-facing decks. There's a sandwich shop and a coffee shop and distillery on the first floor. The distillery occupies the west end, which is this end here, the furthest away from the residential units across the street. The second level has a tasting room at this end, and then a multi-function room at the east end on the second level. The deck in question that has raised neighbor concerns is right here. It's a fairly small deck. We use the articulation in the building that is required by Chapter 9. We have to articulate. We can't have any walls more than 42 feet long, so there's quite a bit of articulation around the building, except for in this point, which handles our distillery equipment, and we've made that volume see-through here, and you can also see it on this elevation, so that there's no solid wall longer than the 42 feet. And the wall in question that we're noting a design standard change from is this wall and the angle of this wall right here. The commercial building is 8,800 square feet. The townhouses are about, there are 2,000 square feet each, 1,500 square feet of living, 500 square feet of garage. So almost 20,000 square feet of townhouse built area, and the total built area for the project is 2,800 square feet. So I think staff went over the design standards that we are proposing alternatives for in pretty good detail. The primary design standard that we're doing a design alternative for is to allow for the horizontal mixed use rather than the vertical mixed use. Underlying code would suggest commercial along this edge and then commercial or a residential above it. Whereas we found this part of the property much nicer for residential units because they back up to California Creek, they're not right on the street, et cetera, et cetera. And also it reduces the impact to the residential neighborhoods both to the north and to the east. The other design standards that we're looking to do design alternatives for mainly have to do with the horizontal mixed use. We will keep the covered walkways and the maximum minimum front yard setbacks for the commercial buildings, but obviously the townhouses will exceed the maximum front yard setback. as well as we will not have a walkway along the front edge of these townhouses because it will not make sense. And then the other design alternatives have to do with pedestrian protection from snow. We are proposing shallower roof pitches that will not dump snow onto sidewalks. We're proposing deeper overhangs on this edge to protect this pedestrian pathway. So to touch on the maximum roof pitch, minimum roof pitch, the underlying zoning district suggests 812 to 1212 pitch roofs. I've been designing in Girdwood for 30 years. Those are incredibly dangerous roof pitches for pedestrians. We would like to keep snow on the roof and have a shallow pitch roof. The roof pitch on this building is very similar to the new clinic that's going in just south of the post office. And so we will be matching new construction that's going on in the new Girdwood town site as we speak. The one objective we received in our public hearings, we've gone through 4 public meetings in Girdwood, 2 before the Land Use Committee and 2 before the GBOS. Overwhelming support for the project, as Nathan said. Only one comment, which was from the neighbors across Hightower, worried about noise, so we changed the hours and of the use of this deck on the east side, and we actually reduced the size a little bit. And we have obtained a resolution of support from the Girdwood Board of Supervisors. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
I have one question with respect to one of the final points you made about the discussion with the neighbors about the noise concerns and the hours of the deck. And can you speak to how that decision relates to the operating hours for the rest of the building? Is the thought that the deck would be kind of closed off at some time when the rest is still operating, or what would that look like?
Yeah, so with the upper portion being the craft distillery tasting room, by state law, a brewery or a distillery closes at 8 o'clock. So that would be the closing time of the distillery. And so that's where those times correlated, that it would be closing time. His concern was if for some reason that space was used for an event or after hours event, that it would spill out onto the deck. And so that's where that assurance made, is that at closing time that deck will be shut off. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Ron?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hopefully the pen tap wasn't too offensive there. Thank you to the petitioner's team for all the information you've provided thus far. I'll echo other commissioners' comments. It looks like an exciting development, and appreciate the engagement you've had with the community thus far. My question is around pedestrian movement on-site and off-site. Can you talk me through how a resident of one of those units, I think it's to the northeast of the site, is going to get to a safe walkway, and what accommodations are being made to account for non-motorized travel on-site? And
I'll look at the landscape plan here because it's nicely done. These are the townhouses here. We're doing a pavement change along the front of the townhouses to demark a walking path from each townhouse door, because obviously with townhouses it's a perennial problem creating a pedestrian connection across all their individual driveways. So this would collect down to this walkway here, and then this walkway comes down and ties into the new walkway along Hightower Road. Now, by conditions of approval, this walkway is going to move out to the back of curb, and then that will tie into the existing walkway as you see here. So essentially we're just extending this walkway along the entire front edge of the property, and we're connecting this building and all these buildings to that via this connection here. Does that answer your question?
just to make sure I follow, so if my directions are right, the northeasternmost unit then, cursor further up,
These ones.
There we go, that unit farthest to the right, yes, that we see there.
Yeah.
So if that resident wants to walk out their front door and get to the street, show the path that they would do so.
They would walk along here and then down here.
Okay. And in so doing, would they walk across then 9 garages?
Yes.
Mr. Zekar, sorry to interrupt. If you could speak, just stand.
So presently, we have configured the driveway to make this kind of a quiet street in compliance with apparatus access. There's a T-shaped turnaround here with a landscape buffer. So we are envisioning this as a community, and there's 9 townhouses that you would have to walk across. If you were this end unit, you'd walk along here and then hit this sidewalk here. From this sidewalk, there, it's not a connection across, but you could actually, we haven't discussed anything with the post office, but there's actually a fairly short connection from there over to the post office, not developed, that you could then get onto the, through here, and then you could get into the New Girdwood town site, town square. So I think there's enough walkways. Yes, it might be a little inconvenient walking along here, but you'd be walking out here. In addition, on the back side of these units, there's the Tiny Creek Trail, which parallels California Creek and goes up towards Girdwood School. I want to flip this over all the way. This one? Yeah, all the way up to the very front one, if you don't mind. Yeah. Yeah. Yep, the Tiny Creek Trail connects back to behind this corner here, and then
Right here. So there is a trail system that does have an entrance, and then there's kind of a little trail as well that kind of pops out, and it's pretty well established. You know, it can be used for bikes as well, so it's pretty big back there too. It won't be disturbed.
there's multiple ways to get onto the trails from the townhouses.
It sounds like a great spot, great area, and you've taken a lot of considerations into your design. I'm just wondering why maybe you did look at an additional pedestrian bike access along that boundary that is California Creek Road. I can appreciate wanting to funnel folks through the commercial area and towards that center, but I'm just wondering.
Yeah, I mean, probably, you know, we at this time are not developing California Creek Way. You know, I think if we would put we could conceivably put a sidewalk in there, we'd be developing that street to half-street standards, I would imagine. And that's a substantial extra cost to the project, which is, developing projects in Girdwood is a financial challenge, to say the least. So we are looking at those items as well. And also, I mean, the other consideration, you know, if I was to, you know, think about it, we have a housing development here. We're not anticipating having people from this particular housing development funnel onto this site. You know, we would like, you know, them to walk along the front edge and come into the site that way.
Commissioner Polis?
Given that, you know, they're only going to allow you guys one driveway access to the site at this point, has anyone done a preliminary mock-up of what that would look like?
We're allowed to put so this walkway here is going to move out to back a curb, and we are allowed to put, Dave Whitfield has said that we could put the connector in the front yard setback. So we would tie it right through here. We may lose one parking spot in this corner, but preliminary layouts suggest that this would just be a one-way drive, kind of a D-shaped drive back to this two-way.
Okay. I was just wondering if, like, it was exposed, maybe in looking at that, there was maybe another parking stall or two that showed up, but doesn't sound like that's how it went.
I think we won't lose any parking. We may lose one.
Okay.
So.
And then what is it, Hightower Road, that's just a half-street improvement too? Is that what that is?
That's correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that presentation. You've got about 40 seconds for rebuttal if you wish to use it after we hear from whoever testifies from the community this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So with that, is there anyone who would like to speak to this case? Feel free to step forward.
Good evening. Niall Sherwood Williams. I'd like to first preface my comments by the fact that I do not live in Girdwood. I'm a resident of District 3, West Anchorage, right on the border of Turnagain and Spenard Community Councils. I can throw a tennis ball and get between one and the other. First, I'd like to comment on the presentation. I'm a little bit disappointed because they had these beautiful designs, and members of the public at home won't be able to see them based on the way probably the meeting was recorded. And I couldn't see it when I was sitting in my seat. So that's a problem. They spent a lot of money and time, and the presentation would have been better to have on the screen, so members of the public at home, the citizens, could see it. I'd like to speak to the term when you were talking about residential and commercial and what will be built first. It was stated that the residential will have to be built. Will it have to be built and completed would be my question, and I would like that to be actually put in the plan. Secondly, I'd like to talk about the fact of what the intent is of the property, because both the distillery and the tasting room on the second floor appear to have an eastward facing opening with glass. So I'd like to understand whether or not that will be visible from the elementary school playground. It does appear to be very close in physical feet. Next, I'd like to have a sign off by the Girdwood Fire Chief on this plan due to the fact of the narrow exit point, especially during high commercial activity times. I wonder, in the event of an emergency, what would be the evacuation procedures. Next, I'd like to speak to the third building. I'd like to address that. If it was actually with intent removed from this packet, I think it should be added back so the voters can really understand what's going on here and what the intent is of the so what is the actual intent of that third building? Where will it be? And what documents exist? I don't want that hidden from the people. Next, I'd like to speak to a broader concern. If you look to page 53, parcel inquiry, parcel details, or public inquiry, parcel details. I'm looking at the assessment history, and I noticed that it's kind of a flatline assessment history between 2019 and 2021. If you look to anyone's green cards in the municipality of Anchorage, most people experience between a 12.5% and a 16.5% increase year over year on their property. And that's between 2021 and 2022. So I'm a little bit concerned as to why this is such a low valuation here, and it hasn't increased.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else? We'll see if there's anyone else who wants to testify first.
Good evening. My name is Christina Hendrickson, and I reside at 150 Hightower, just a few blocks from the proposed development. I live in a multi-family unit building of 15 units, and we share a well that is located in the post office parking lot adjacent to this proposed development. We share that well with the post office, with the clinic, with the trailer park, and with the Hightower pub. Whereas I have full regard for the design and its mitigation for future development, I do wish that, or at least to impress upon the construction team, to uphold the SWIP in an exemplary manner and any other construction best management practices that would pertain to the health of that well for how many it serves there in Girdwood. Second, I'd like to talk about parking. And I wish for additional dialogue after my 3 minutes is done, if necessary. Parking is an issue in downtown Girdwood. The municipality of Anchorage did provide for a approval of permit for the construction of a 7,000 square foot clinic just a block from this. So now, without any adequate parking for that clinic, not only do the patrons of that clinic and its expanded employees park in the parking lot for the post office, as do patrons of the post office, persons working at the post office, and everybody eating at Chair 5, especially on a busy weekend during the summer and in the winter, plus the 18-wheeler that delivers our mail on Wednesdays every day in the week. I'd also like to expand upon snow storage. We do not truck our snow out of Girdwood. Instead, we store our local town center snow between Glacier and California creeks. When it recedes, we do have oily waste, single-use plastics, clothes, and a lot of gravel left over that spills out. I encourage a use and a look at the snow storage for this proposed site. Finally, a note about development in Girdwood. There is a vocal minority that would like to see attainable, affordable housing and units that are offered at less than market rate and even offered at 0% interest or discounted rate in some way. Leading the charge for this is a newly formed entity called the Girdwood Community Land Trust, of which the developer is a member. Yet none of these elements are proposed as part of the CCRs for this development. As this body and other bodies look at and evaluate development in Girdwood, please note that there's a differentiation about the standard and litmus test of the requests and demands of the Girdwood community regarding housing for certain developers versus others. I stand by ready for questions and additional dialogue for what I discussed this evening, as well as any pedestrian questions you might have from somebody who lives 2 blocks away. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further members in the community looking to come forward, you've got 39 seconds.
So I'll be very quick. The first four presentations were done conference call where the public saw this whole presentation, in fact more computer models, so the community saw that, and we will be presenting to Michelle Weston, the chief of the Girdwood Fire Department, as part of our fire marshal permit.
And I realize we have a limited time. The elementary school, our kids go to it. It's you can't see it from this site. It's actually probably about a quarter mile away. And as far as the Community Land Trust, my wife is and was a part of that. However, this project is about our family, and it doesn't have anything to do with her affiliation with that organization.
So that's the end of your time, but I, just speaking for myself, would be curious if you had anything else that you'd like to say in response to some of the comments we heard.
Sure, there was quite a few. I guess for the first gentleman, I addressed the elementary school issue that he brought up. And it is, I think it's probably about a quarter mile away.
So I did measure that just before the meeting. It's 1,650 feet as the crow flies, and 2,000 feet on Hightower Road.
With the fire chief, Michelle Weston, she's seen this project. I've talked to her about it. She doesn't have any concerns. However, all of this would defer to the state fire marshal as far as code enforcement and site access.
And that's correct. The state fire marshal.
I'm sorry, if you could just speak closer to the mic.
The state fire marshal requires a letter from the authority having jurisdiction, which in this case is the Girdwood Fire Chief.
And to Ms. Hendrickson's comments about snow storage, I think this lot was one of the main snow storage spots for downtown Girdwood. And Kyle Kelly, who handles our snow removal and snow storages, he realizes this, and he's making plans in the future for movement of the snow downtown. We have adequate space on our site, more than adequate for on-site snow storage. So we won't have to be trucking it off or move it to any other lot. Concerning Building B, at the onset of this whole project, it was, we definitely wished to do a second building in that corner because we felt like it was could have been a great community space. And our ideas initially were for like a rock climbing gym with a nice open facade and, kind of a community workout area. However, we decided to take off, only as much as we could chew. And so we removed that from our plan. If we do in, 5-6 years want to go ahead with that, we'll go through the proper processes and the correct channels to get it approved.
Commissioner Pullis.
I feel like I should ask one same question again. I'm not gonna lie, I really like this development, but the parking thing, knowing what I know about Girdwood, I hang out in Girdwood once in a while and go skiing and go to the breweries, and sometimes those places get busy. And it just seems like the location you guys are in and putting a third of the parking on the public available parking next to you with all the other stuff going on, I feel like there's going to be parking in the street going on. And I'm not saying that's not okay. I just want you guys to tell me, what do you guys think that parking lot is right now with the clinic in action at 4 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon? How full is that parking lot, being that you guys are there and see it often?
Yeah, I was just there because I picked my kid up at 3:30 or 3 o'clock and then was driving through, hit the post office, and then I was on my way here because I knew a storm was hitting. So I drive by there every day, as I'm sure Ms. Hendrickson does as well. A lot of that parking is going on right near the building site of where the clinic is, so it's on the road. However, I pull into that parking lot that is to the help me out with my direction here, the north of the post office, and there was just a handful of cars in the parking lot itself. And I think that's just attributed, the workers are just trying to get as close as they can because they're working outside and trying to get a roof on that place. And that's where they have their lunch, is in their car, because I watch them walk over to it. So the parking lot itself, I don't see that there's a huge impact to it, and maybe other people will think differently, but Girdwood is seen as it's just a land of parking lots there. And we have so much available parking with an anticipated growth for commercial. And that's what that original plan was, all that parking was for commercial growth. And I feel like that's what we are trying to provide. And so I don't think it's an overburden to the current parking that we have now, especially within a 600-foot walking distance.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to get someone else's opinion besides what I've read in this packet. So.
Sure.
Thank you.
And I can echo that. I was around when they came up with all these parking lots. It's not just this parking lot. There's parking lots along here. This one's outside of the 600-foot walking distance. There's all the on-street parking. And that was specifically put in to encourage commercial development in Girdwood. Now, there's been only one major project since that was put in, which is the clinic, and we would be the second project. And like I said, there's 70 parking spots within 600 feet, and it was there to promote this kind of project.
A quick question from myself here. We heard, I think, one of the points that was in the center here that was raised was, I think, as I understood it, a kind of a concern to confirm that the residential piece would be in place. And can you speak to what the sequence of development will look like again for the site?
Yeah, I wasn't very clear on the intent of that question. Yeah, as we start the residential piece, the townhouses that are near California Creek will be completed all at once. They'll be gone through the marketing with our real estate agent, pre-sold, and the demand is high. And then once those are completed completely into a condo association and individually owned, that's when the commercial side would begin.
Thank you. Commissioner Ron?
Thank you to the chair. I'm going to double down on my pedestrian flow questions, this time not so much on-site, but off-site as well. I think Ms. Hendrickson opened the door there to that as well. I'm looking at sheet A03. I'm not an expert on this area, and so would like you to help me understand what's going on with where people may be moving on foot from point A to point B. So if I look to the east of what the proposed development is, I see a few structures. Is that residential or commercial? And then same thing across Hightower. Are those, is that a multiplex, multifamily residential, or is that a commercial development there? And then tracing the sidewalks, you know, working from the proposed clinic to the post office, I see what appears to be sidewalk on the edge of lot, right away and sidewalk. And then we get to your proposed development and it's a different design for pedestrian flow where the sidewalk is not apparently at the edge of lot. And then I don't see any sidewalk, maybe it's hidden there, but I do see a crosswalk along Hightower. So can you just give me a better understanding of what's going on with people moving?
Yeah, absolutely. And before Marco jumps in here, one of our conditions of approval is to bring that sidewalk into the right-of-way at the street edge. So that if you see the sidewalk that continues in front of the post office, and this is a little bit misleading because the south is actually to the left, and so the east of that post office, as that sidewalk runs, that will continue the full front of our lot. And then past that, you run into all residential, and that's a help me out with the name of this thing. I walk by it all the time. Thank you. Creekside. So those are Creekside condos. That's a government subsidized housing project. And then the ones to the east are the Snow Raven condos, and those are all 3-story buildings with multiple units inside of them.
So, about to amplify.
Sorry, if you can get the mic again for that. Thank you.
So the sidewalk, the concrete sidewalk ends here, and then it transitions over to a bike path on the east side of Hightower Road, and the bike path extends all the way up to Girdwood School. On the west side of Hightower Road, the walkway would end here. This is the last developable parcel on that side of the road. After that, you're in the California Creek floodway, and it's not developable land after that. So if these folks could get on this sidewalk and transition into the Girdwood Town Square directly, more easily than they do now, because right now they're actually crossing Hightower Road at this curve, and in the morning we see kids crossing that at that curve, and it's actually quite dangerous. Now, you know, they probably will still do that because they need to get up to the school, but
There's a crosswalk there.
There's a crosswalk, but presumably people that are living here could stay on this side of the street and get into downtown Girdwood.
I really appreciate that description. It helps me understand. Follow-up, and then I'll be quiet for a while, is we talked about public parking and relying on that to some extent. Is there public on-street parking along Hightower to the south of the proposed development? Where is this public parking that we're talking about, or is it more to the north in the post office downtown area?
In your packet, I have a public parking access plan, and I did not print it out. I should have. So the 600-foot walking, it's not 600 feet as the crow flies from the development as you walk. So it cuts off about here, and if I recall correctly, there's about 20 spaces or so along Hightower Road, and there's another 20 spaces or so along this road here, Holmgren, and then there's 20 odd spaces or so in the parking lot east of or west of the post office. What's that? Page 84 in the packet. We did a fairly detailed parking access plan. And the red lines are all 600-foot walking distances. Yeah, I'm sorry your packet isn't as nice as...
I was going to say sheet A05 shows a better, bigger picture of what they're talking about in the big 11 by 17s. I have one more quick question, if good to go. Can you guys just talk about stormwater quality real quick? You know, I can see that there's some landscape on the site. I saw 2 storm drain catch basins. Can you just elaborate a little bit on how you intend to meet stormwater management requirements?
And if you could introduce yourself before you begin responding.
Chris Burt with FR Bell. I'm the civil engineer on this project. Yeah, so right now, I'm trying to find a good... So if you look in on the site showing the parking that's on site, there's kind of a wedge, pizza-shaped piece kind of between the 2 parking areas. So, you know, right now it's still a way preliminary stages because we kind of wanted to get all this finalized before we got too much detail. But that's basically going to be like a low spot. We're talking with the landscape architect, and what we're trying to do here is something a little bit different. It's kind of, instead of like a hard curb on that stuff, we're going to use like a gabion wall kind of for that separation to get that so that the water can kind of just infiltrate through without having a bunch of curb cuts and whatnot. And then the inside of that will be, you know, a grassed area, kind of enough to control. We're thinking it's going to have to be some kind of a almost like a rain garden design where you'll have like, you know, the underground piping will be perforated pipe, but then above it you're going to have your rock and then sand and then your organics, so you can kind of filter everything from the parking lot before it gets into the storm drain and heads out. So that's kind of the...
Are you guys required to do, I can't remember in Girdwood if it's different than it is in town, pre and post-development peak control and all that?
Yep, the same.
Okay.
Full, and if you look in there, that's kind of one of the requirements they have is, you know, at this stage, because nothing's been submitted to building safety, so they have all those as resolved with, and so it's going to go through the full pump.
So you'll set your inlet basin a little higher and let it build
so you
up
have a
and
storm
then...
overflow,
Okay.
just in case you have a 100-year event, you don't have a lake in the middle of it. And,
just
you know,
checking. The site looked pretty tight, you know, so I just had to ask the question.
Yeah, and it is.
Yep,
you know,
I get
but
it.
It's all kind of going towards the right direction at least. And then,
The point is you're trying. I get it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
thank you.
Yeah, and in addition, the soils under this site are quite good for Girdwood. It's all alluvial gravel, so it perks really well.
Okay, thank you all for the presentation. I don't see any further questions.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing for this item, and we'll look to the commission for a motion. Commissioner Polis?
Yeah, in case 2022-0017, to approve the Glacier City Center Development Master Plan subject to conditions 1 through 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, and 11 of the staff report, including the 3 advisory comments. I recommend approval with the department recommendations and advisory comments.
Okay, just to confirm that I heard correctly, that's the conditions 1 through 9, and the 10 and 11, you're referring to the page numbers.
All conditions and advisory comments.
Okay, thank you. That motion is seconded by Commissioner Winchester. Commissioner Polis, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah. I think it meets the approval criteria, and where it doesn't, the alternative compliance is adequate. There's no public opposition other than some noise and some stormwater quality and the parking, which we discussed in depth. And I think, you know, that basically throughout the rest of the process, it will work all that stuff out. And the remaining grading, stormwater, landscaping, public improvements, and all that will be resolved through building permits and improvement of public place agreements. So I recommend approval.
Commissioner Winchester.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Ellis, for bringing this forward. It looks like a nice project. I will note that there was 4 public outreach events where there was a letter of support also from the Girdwood Board of Supervisors, I believe. So for that, I'll be supporting this also.
Commissioner Ron.
Just briefly, I agree with prior commissioner's comments. I do intend to support the motion. I appreciate the petitioner's responses to my many questions around pedestrian flow and the considerations that they are making to being a good steward of the neighborhood, not just for cars, but for bikers and walkers as well. In terms of parking, a lot of discussion there. One thing I didn't bring to the table but would now is an informal request that the petitioners take a look at electric vehicle parking on site or in the area. As Girdwood grows and transitions occur with respect to how we travel in our cars, may be a nice amenity to look into there at the site. So that's all I have.
Okay, seeing nothing further, we'll call the vote.
Mr. Strike?
Yes.
Ms. Krishna?
Yes.
Thank you.
And that motion passes. Next item on the agenda is case 2022-0018. Can we hear a report?
Thank you, Chair. This is a request from Moreland Properties to rezone 3 parcels and 1.16 acres from R4 multifamily residential to B3 general business district. The applicant would like to rezone the parcel to result in one consistent zoning district across the 3 subject parcels. These lots currently serve as the parking lot for Hanson subdivision, better known as Beartooth. The proposed rezone will allow the petitioner to subdivide the lots into one lot in the future, resulting in no split zoning. The site is currently classified as Town Center in the Anchorage 2040 Land Use Plan, West Anchorage District Plan, and Spenard Corridor Plan. The proposed rezone is consistent with all of these designations. Comments from reviewing agencies are included in Attachment 3. No objections were received. As of this writing, no public comments have been received, and the community councils did not provide comments. The Planning and Zoning Commission may recommend approval of the following rezone, subject to the following criteria. Criteria 1 is met. The rezone is in the long-term interest of the citizens of Anchorage and promotes public health, safety, and general welfare. Criteria 2 is met. The proposed rezone request is consistent with the comprehensive plan designations of Town Center in the 2040 Land Use Plan, West Anchorage District Plan, and Spenard Corridor Plan. Criteria 3 is met. The proposed rezone is consistent with the purpose of the B3 General Business District. Criteria 4 is met. The general area contains a mix of commercial and medium to high density multifamily residential uses. The proposed zoning is consistent and compatible with surrounding uses. The proposed B3 district zoning designation is compatible with general commercial use properties and helps create a compatible zoning district and land use pattern across the subject parcels. Standard 5 is met. Public water and sewer are available to this parcel. Increasing the land use intensity in this area is unlikely to stretch the capabilities of existing services beyond their capacity. Criteria 5 is met. The proposed rezoning is not anticipated to result in adverse impacts. Criteria 6 is met. The proposed rezoning is not anticipated to result in significant adverse impacts with adjacent land uses. The rezoning does not change the use of the site and results in consistent and compatible land use across the site. Criteria 8 is met. This request is consistent with the designation of Town Center. Criteria 9 is met. The proposed rezoning will not result in a split zone lot. The rezoning to B3 General Business District creates a consistent zoning pattern across the subject parcel, and it will allow for subdivision in the future. The department finds the approval criteria for the rezone has been met and recommends approval of the rezoning from R4 multifamily district to B3 General Business District. Thank you, and the petitioner's representative is available.
Okay, seeing no questions, if the petitioner would like to present. It's a light touch.
There we go. Good evening. I'm here to talk about the Bears 2-3 zone.
And could you give your,
Yep. My name is Laquita Chmielowski. I'm the Land Use Planning Manager with Dell. I'm here tonight representing Moreland Properties, and I'd like to reserve any of my remaining time for rebuttal. So as staff mentioned, the property is the Beartooth Theater and the associated parking. The property that you see outlined in blue is the actual theater building location, and that is the property that is zoned B3. The 3 parcels to the west are the parking lot that supports the Beartooth Theater, and those are the R4 parcels. And so Moreland is pursuing a rezone for those R4 properties to go to B3 in preparation to replat the properties into one single parcel, which is how they function today. So again, the property that's outlined in the red dashed and colored blue is where the theater building sits. It's B3. It's B3 zoning to the north, east, and south. And then the remaining properties that are dashed in red that are yellow with the blue hatching are the R4 properties, which are R4 to the west and to the north, and then B3 to the south. So just a little bit of history about the property. So the building itself was built in 1964. It was a replacement for the Denali Theater, which was originally located on 4th Avenue and was damaged during the 1964 earthquake. So it's operated in that location as a theater since that time. The B3 property is where the theater is located, and there is some parking just to the north, but back in 1964, the parking requirements were probably next to none. And so in 2000, the Beartooth Theater was opened by Moreland Property, and they purchased the properties to the west to provide additional parking for the theater and the restaurant, which opened in 2001. The properties are tied together by a parking agreement because that is how they function, and the parking is needed to support the theater and the restaurant and to meet Title 21 parking requirements. So as staff mentioned, this rezone is in furthers the goals of all the plans that are related to this area. So a town center is really supposed to be supporting commercial uses for things like restaurants and entertainment, which is exactly what the Beartooth Theater provides. So we're really just trying to take that first step so that we can plat this property into a single parcel, just how it functions today. And it furthers all the goals of the plans. So we did meet with the Spenard Community Council in December of 2021. Their concerns really were related to parking. And as I mentioned, the current parking meets Title 21 requirements. The rezone wouldn't change anything from what it is today. If there was any development at the site in the future, we would still have to meet Title 21 requirements and work with the city to do that. So it doesn't change anything from what you see today. And with that, I can answer any questions.
Okay, I don't see any at the moment, so thank you for your presentation. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Ron.
Thank you through the chair. Ms. Chmielowski, I appreciate the history of that. I wasn't aware of some of that, so very informative. Regarding your last statement in response to community concerns, while this rezone doesn't change things because it is a rezone itself, it doesn't change the use of the property for parking, but does it open the door for that to change in the future? I know the answer to that. I just want you to acknowledge
So based
the
on the current use, they need the parking to meet the Title 21 requirements. If I personally can't think of a scenario where you wouldn't need that parking to support any type of commercial use, even if the theater building were to change use. And again, if they did, they're going to have to go through a building permit process. You're going to have to show that you meet Title 21 parking requirements. So there's no way to really get around that, providing adequate parking.
Okay, I think we have a comment from staff.
Thank you. Through the chair, to add on to that, our Beartooth Theater Pub sits is actually economically linked to the parcel directly adjacent to that. So the far east of the ones being rezoned, so they're tied together and they can't really function separately. So parcels are economically linked when they can't function on their own. So further protection that the parking lot is needed to support the Beartooth, and other redevelopment is not likely since they're needed to function one another.
Commissioner Polis.
Just a quick question. Do you know the existing parking, is it plus stalls or is it plus one stall for the use at the site?
No, they're currently at the
They're right
minimum
at.
required.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, it looks like you've got 6.5 minutes that you can save for rebuttal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, if anyone would like to speak to this.
Hi, Niall Sherwood-Williams again. So with this one, I have a number of concerns. My first concern is within the packet. I want to see the parcel inquiry for the assessment value of all the individual parcels, as well all the individual, how they are currently zoned now, and then what you're trying to move it to. My concern with that area is there's a lot of high density housing there. I am very concerned when I see a residential being rezoned to commercial on the very edges of commercial zones. What typically happens is over time there's an over-commercialization in cities because we allow these individual changes on small properties to occur. And it's like the snowball effect. At what point do you curb that back and do you say our residential communities are more important? Now, I understand that at this property it's currently functioning in a parking lot, but maybe we should look the other way. Maybe because it's zoned residential and that's how it was originally made to be, maybe instead of the parking lot being there, maybe we need to put a residential housing unit there. Maybe that should be the concern that we're talking about. Maybe that parking lot needs to be converted into housing. And see, I come from the East Coast, so I've seen this happen to city after city after city. Poor planning that occurs year over year, and it's not y'all's fault. What I'm saying is everyone has a mindset of the here and now without understanding that by allowing this infiltration of commercialization of properties to continue to come into our neighborhoods, it's a concern. And that's why I always come and speak on the mixed use. That's one of my big ones. This one is not that. This one, they want to make it all commercial. Being that that's my area, that's supposed to be the artsy area of Anchorage. That's supposed to be the young and up and coming area of Anchorage. Beautiful, involved communities that are supposed to be interlinked with bicycles and everything else. Again, I'm concerned. And whenever it comes to additional restaurants or bars, more booze licenses, what is really the intent of the property owner? That's what I'd like to know. They hired Dell. Dell's big time, big money. What's the real intent?
Thank you for your testimony. See one other person out here. I don't know if you're looking to testify in this matter. Looks like nope. So you've got 6 minutes and 30 seconds for rebuttal.
So just to clarify, on the 2040 land use plan, All the properties on the south side of West 27th Avenue between Spenard and Minnesota are identified as town center. And B3 is an implementing zoning district for town centers. So it's really meant to be a commercial area. And that is seen not only in the 2040 plan, but the 2020 Anchorage Comprehensive Plan, the West Anchorage District Plan, and the Spenard Corridor Plan. Right now, that property, as it functions today in the use of the theater and the restaurant, could not support residential development, nor do any of the plans indicate that that's what the intent is for this area. I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Okay, I don't see any pending. Thank you very much for your presentation. That will go ahead and close the public hearing. And what's the will of the body? Commissioner Spinelli.
Yes. In the matter of case 2022-0018, a request to rezone 3 parcels from R4 multifamily residential district to B3 general business district, I move to approve.
And that motion is seconded by Commissioner Winchester. Commissioner Spinelli, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, real briefly, I intend to support the motion. I think that this property's been discussed for a long time. Spenard community comes out pretty hard when residential is rezoned or proposed to be rezoned to B3, and I don't hear or see them, very much of them, at least the community council and the representation there. I think that this has been in the works a long time coming, and I intend to support it.
Commissioner Winchester.
Yeah, I'd like to note that this rezone is compatible with the goals and plans of 2040 Land Use Plan, 2020 Comprehensive Plan, West District Plan, West Anchorage District Plan, and the Spenard Corridor Plan. And because of that, I'll be supporting it.
And I'll just note briefly, I intend to support it as well. I think it meets the approval criteria as presented in the application, and that we did hear a concern from the community about kind of the potential spread of commercial adjacent to residential. I recognize that concern. I think in this case, the 2040 Land Use Plan, as noted, supports this particular designation, and that there are other aspects of the code which we've seen on previous occasions that kind of put a thumb on the scale of keeping residential where it has been designated as a potential use, but that is not true for this location. Okay, seeing nothing further, we'll go ahead and call the vote.
Mr. Strike?
Yes.
Ms. Krishna?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that motion passes. That is the final listed item on our agenda, and I guess before we close, I'll just note briefly for the record here that Commissioner O'Quinn, his term expires, so he's no longer here today. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to make the last meeting, so we weren't able to provide a quality send-off for him, but wanted to put on the record here that I know I appreciated serving with Commissioner O'Quinn. I had the luxury of sitting next to him when he started and when I was still early on the commission, and so I enjoyed and appreciate his service. Commissioner Ron.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'll echo those comments and add to them. Commissioner O'Quinn, thank you for your service. I understand you were on the commission for 2 years, a short time, but always appreciate how he got things started when we were having difficulty in doing so. And he did it in a way that was balanced and allowed us to engage in the discussion that we then had to work through issues. So I will definitely miss that.
Okay, we'll look for a motion to adjourn. It's coming. Moved by Commissioner Pullis, seconded by Commissioner Ron.